Hey there, guys, it's Metro, and we are back reviewing every single dungeon for Season 2, making a whole in-depth guide to try to help people who are new to either Blood DK, tanking, pugging, whatever you think is appropriate. We're doing it, and today we're here with Halls of Atonement. So, before we even start, I'm glad I waited to make this video because they just actually increased the timer by 1 minute, which is a really generous change. I would honestly not say that this dungeon was that tight, but it was one of the top few tightest timers in the whole circuit of keys. And the big problem is how the dungeon plays out. I always said that the issue with this dungeon was how people approach it, and it seems like it's the only way to approach it. But I bet Blizzard at some point probably thought people were going to do it differently, and that's kind of upset the way the timers work out. So right out of the gate here, there's this little trick. I don't ever do it, but apparently these mobs here, they will only run when they sense a player. And the only way they could sense a player is if you move. So I'm not 100% sure when you're supposed to stop moving and when you're like, I think as soon as you put the key in, you just don't move. And then the mobs are just back there. You'll see what I mean. They actually are running as you see they're running right now. So yeah, if you do not have a way to gather all of these mobs quickly, you could have nobody move there, and then the mobs will just be back there near those mobs. Okay, so again, I've never really done it. It doesn't really matter to me. It's Blood DK. But yeah, I guess it's slightly suboptimal to let them run all the way here. I just always kind of assumed nobody was ever going to do it, but I think people kind of gotten used to it. So right out of the gate, though, we do a really big pull. Sometimes, actually, I think this is it. Yeah, this is actually it. So we do a really big pull here. This is 4 packs. Usually I would do 3 packs most weeks. Definitely not doing all 4 here, but this is like the easiest trash week possible that I recorded this on. The prior week with Tyrannical, Sanguine, Storming. Easiest possible trash week. And the main thing here is just getting a lust. But again, this is also kind of not like, so the weird thing about this dungeon is that this like meta route has transpired, and I don't really see a better way to approach the dungeon myself, but I'm just alerting you to this fact. This route has transpired and it's just not very good. Like, so we're gonna lust now, and then we're not gonna lust again until like, we could have easily gotten better value out of this lust gap that we have here, but this is like not a very good lust in the first place, and it doesn't really do much for us. Like the next lust is for a very long time. So yeah, I don't know. It seems like a dungeon. You start the dungeon with bloodlust and there's 31 minutes. It's like, oh, we can get 4 lusts in here, but just nobody even tries to do that. So I don't really know. But anyway, let's get right to the actual discussion about the mob. So I would say the only thing you really need to be aware of is the obliterators. Right now they buffed, as you see this cast, Wicked Bolt is going to get off. It will always pick the tank, and it's been buffed like pretty substantially in Season 2. I don't really know why they buffed that of all things, but it does do a lot of damage. So especially, if you're watching this on the week it gets published, it's raging. Any type of fortified week where there's a lot of danger from the trash, you really need to interrupt that. Now, if you're a Blood DK, it's really not that bad. Magic damage doesn't, necessarily stop us from succeeding. And also we have AMS. So usually I try to get a good AMS in on some of these pulls, but it's pretty blasé this week, man. We're just doing whatever we want. So I'm not even thinking about it. But it's a great pack for Gore Fiends, great pack for Rock Ellie. Some of the core things like Ashen Hollow, anything that is like a good, strong CD that's going to help. Yeah, you probably just want to use every single thing here. This is the epitome. I've been talking about this for years. The first pull of a dungeon, you use all your CDs. And this is exactly what you want to see on the first pull of a dungeon, because it's the only time in the dungeon where every single CD is going to be up. Now, also, that Dark Blade does this deadly thrust. It's just a very small frontal cone. So if you just simply move in any direction away from it, you should always dodge that. But as a tank, don't worry too much about it. It's really not that big of a deal. I'd be more worried about the actual DPS getting hit by that than myself. But anyway, here we go, another really big pack. So just in case somebody doesn't know, this gargoyle here is actually something that as a vent theory, you can create a mind control scenario for. Like there's like an extra action button, you click it, and now he's on your side. Otherwise, you have to kill him. Once that mind control ends, he leaves. So this is actually a pretty important part of this dungeon, because if you don't do that and you accidentally aggro it, then your count is going to be way off. So I wouldn't say this dungeon is mandatory to have a Venthyr, but first of all, it's going to be a huge DPS gain to have it. The gargoyle itself does also damage, but it also, as you see up here, you get this long 40-second buff, which is actually a 10% damage reduction. So it's really good. Actually, I mean, I think they might have buffed it even further than that, but it's a really nice thing to have. So whenever you have a big pack like this, you definitely want to grab that guy. But for example, if we didn't have a Venthyr, that was going to aggro anyway because of the way we're pulling it. Now we have to fight it. You know what I mean? So it's like a huge swing to have and not have a Venthyr. So just keep that in mind. But otherwise, it's the same mobs. Now, by now, you might have seen the Houndmaster in this pack. Okay, so there's a couple of them throughout the dungeon, and they are a very, very important mob type. I won't say they're the most dangerous mob in here, but they do something that needs to be interrupted, needs to be stunned, needs to be canceled one way or the other. You won't be able to actually interrupt it, but it's called Loyal Beasts. There it is right there, Loyal Beasts. So it's actually a little reference to Game of Thrones, I'd imagine. But yeah, it's going to enrage all the dogs or any beast that is in the pack. And guess what is a beast? The Loyal Stoneborn. So if you were fighting a Loyal Stoneborn there and the Houndmaster gets Loyal Beasts cast off, the Stoneborn is also going to enrage. And that enrage is absolutely insane. Like it's really bad. And if you let those dogs hit you with that enrage, you're probably going to die. I've had it happen a few times where it's like literally just one shots you. So yeah, you need to stop it. You can stop it with Death Grip. It is possible with Death Grip, Gore Fiends, etc. Knockbacks, obviously, too. But yeah, you're probably going to want to rely on a stun. So, you know, Blood DK, Strangulator, whatever, but asphyxiate. But yeah, rogues, paladins, like Hunter could throw a trap or a knockback. Don't think like Mage can do anything. Shaman's not really going to do anything. Warlock maybe could try to fear it. But it's like this is an incredibly important part of the trash in this dungeon, because if you continue to let that go, you're gonna constantly be kiting, right? And you know, whatever people say about kiting, it's just a DPS loss regardless, right? Like that's not something that you should be worried about. Don't let that cast go off. And I'm telling you right now, if you're not a tank, it's still your job. Okay. The DPS have to do this, and you've seen me go to war with people over this. Like these guys just don't understand. Like if I have to run 40 yards away from the mobs, then you're going to do less damage. Just stun the freaking cast. It's not that difficult. Loyal Beast, Plater, like, oh, yeah, it's so obvious, too, by the way. If you guys are not using Plater, let's see if we can quickly go back and find it. You'll see it's so cool how Plater actually, there you see, Plater is lighting up, telling you very obviously that this cast is going on. And it makes it really easy to click it and get that stun. So I think we just death grip it and stop it right at the last second there. So definitely, if you're not using Plater right now, Plater is actually like a boss mod for Dungeons 2 in ways, and you could fully customize all of that. So all of these dangerous casts, you know, you can make it even more obvious than that. You can make it like scream and you can do whatever you want with this add-on. It's great. But anyway, so that's that. You're gonna see those a couple times throughout the dungeon, and then, like I said, the obliterators too. You're gonna want to see. You're gonna see these a lot throughout the dungeon. So just kicking Wicked Bolt, getting all that stuff together. Now we are going to have the first mini boss of the dungeon. It's called the Shard of Halkias. Everyone I know calls it a church elemental, so make sure you call it that too. It's a little rock dude. He's made of a house basically, and he's going to kind of slam the ground. So let's talk about what's going on in this pack. So we see two new mobs, the Church Elemental, and we also see this Collector, okay? So we have this cast going off here, which is actually not a good idea. So formerly I used to be like in charge of this Collect Sins, okay? You see it? It's going off right now on the Collector. It's a mess. There's a lot of trash. Sorry, I apologize, Ev. But yeah, this is what the dungeon looks like. So so we have the Collector going to use this cast here, and every like second it's casting, it's like a downward channel. Every second it's casting, or maybe like even half a second, it's spawning ads. Okay, so those ads are like not like they're not dangerous, but it's just like extra trash count that you're not getting. You know, it's like mobs that you're fighting that aren't giving you anything for fighting them. So you don't want to let that go. So you can again stop it with stuns and stuff like this, but it should be noted that there's like there's a cast of it, and then it's a channel, right? So there's the upward and then there's the downward. That's the way I always refer to it. if you stop the upward, the cast will continue. Like she'll do it again, or won't stop it. Okay, so you want to wait until the actual cast is gone, and then the channel begins to try to stop it with stuns and grips and stuff like this. Okay, and once you do that, then you will have the cast stop. Now, there's also another mechanic that it does, and that is it puts like a big curse out or something like that. I know that's the curse of obliteration from the Obliterators 2. I conflated the two there. That's a big red circle, goes on people. If it hits them, it does a lot of damage. Luckily, it's dispellable too, so I don't even really bother interrupting that because there's too many things to interrupt on these packs. So just, you got to pick your battles. Let the DPS interrupt that if they want. Otherwise, they're going to be purging it. Mage is going to be getting that off. Shaman's going to be getting that off. But here we go. Siphon Life. That's it there. So that's going to do a lot of damage. You see it's on that Warlock there, Hobbs Dot, and it is doing a lot of damage. He actually dies to it. Yes, he actually dies to it. So that is a very dangerous cast right there, and that is one that you really do want to try to stop if you can. But again, you would have to stun it, and it's not as easy as it sounds. But did you notice there how while he was casting upward, it was moving? He was moving. Like, he can cast it while moving. So if you grip that on the upward, it's not going to stop. You know what I mean? Like, that's a weird little peculiarity there. But anyway, all of that stuff is happening while you're fighting the Shard of Halkias. And none of this is required, by the way. You don't have to pull all of these things together. But you're going to have to. And I don't know now, maybe with the timer being a little bit more lenient, it's not going to be as big of a deal. But I would not even consider, these mobs are just, they're so important, this Shard of Halkias thing, and it's very dangerous, but it's like at the same time, you have to be efficient here because there's 4 mini bosses in this dungeon. It's kind of ridiculous, actually. But anyway, it's going to do that Sin Quake, and that's just going to put a gray thing on, or brown thing under every single person. So wherever you were, you just move, and that's it. Just don't move on to somebody else's prior location, and you're good. And then it's also going to do this Thrash, which the way it used to be, people used to try to line of sight it, or more so max range it. Yeah, Thrash here. They used to max range it. You can't do that anymore. They made it like a 60-yard range. So you could do it still if you want, but you won't be in damage range. But otherwise, it's just physical damage. So it's really not that dangerous, probably 9 out of 10 weeks. If you have a week where like raging maybe is also bad, maybe bolstering is really bad, but it's just straight up physical damage now. So frankly, that's probably the least dangerous thing in the pack. But just keep that in mind if you're especially not a healer, or if you're like somebody that can't control your own health pool easily, probably want to make sure you don't get extra damage taken at that point. Then we have the first lieutenant here, which is either Varuth or Incinerator Arcalon, or whatever this dude's name is. He is the best one that you can get here. You can actually probably pull this with the trash that you just had if you were really aggressive. I would never pull Varuth with trash, but this guy is actually really, really easy to pull with trash. But yeah, you got to move out of that fire, as you see. Shaman doesn't realize that. And just kick. It's super easy. One kick from tank is always first, and then everybody else kicks the second one, and that's it. It just cycles from there. So not much going on here. We pick up the power, and then we got to run all the way back. So this is why this dungeon kind of sucks, because like, look at how much time we're running. I mean, this is almost 30-some seconds of running. It's actually going to be even longer because we pulled that extra pack. So typically we would come here and pull this pack down into the next pack, but because of the way we did it, we're just doing it in a different order, trying to be a little bit more efficient. So one way or the other, it's all about combining packs here. You always want to try to be fighting two packs of mobs. These packs individually aren't dangerous, but the problem is they're low volume, right? So there's like times in this dungeon where if you pulled pack for pack, you would be fighting 2 mobs for 10-15 minutes straight, and that's just not going to get it done on most keys. And it's really not dangerous as long as you actually understand what you're fighting. You should be good. So we're like super easy trash week. I'm looking to go for lieutenant here as well. But yeah, just the obliterator. Just make sure you're not. If you're not dying to the wicked bolts, then you can kick the obliterate the curse cast. Okay. If you are dying to wicked bolts, then you as the tank have to kick that yourself. That has to be your job. And then the Houndmaster as well. Make sure you're stunning that cast. And also the Hounds should be talked about. Okay, so they're like the most dangerous mob in the dungeon, in my opinion. But they're not like, that's all they're one-dimensional. It's just one-dimensional danger. They just do a ton of physical damage and they put a bleed on you, and that's it. So you could either kite them or just, parry a bunch and get lucky and not get the bleeds and all this stuff. It's like, they're very one-dimensional in their danger. The only reason they're actually dangerous is because the Houndmaster is going to divert attention from them. So if you don't have your kicks ready to go, or you're not able to make sure you drop these bleed stacks, then this pack is extremely dangerous. But as long as you do that in some way, it's like a no danger pack. Like, this is actually like, there's nothing going on here. It's one kick and then a bunch of AoE. So but we could easily wipe here, like, so the Loyal Beast cast goes off. There you go. So I was slow on the stun. Loyal Beast cast goes off. Now I'm just running. Like, I mean, that's it. That's as bad as it's going to get. Those mobs are going to absolutely destroy me if they hit me, and it does last a long time. It can be de-enraged. It can be soothed, but if the DPS didn't stun the cast, then they're probably not going to soothe the cast either, right? I mean, like, what are the odds? So, yeah, just get ready to run. It's really not much at all. And it's also a good opportunity to run because then you are dropping your bleed stacks anyway from the dogs. So that's that. Pretty straightforward. The trash in here is, like I said, it's very combinable. It's really not anything to be thinking about on most weeks, but it's all about making sure that you get good value out of each pull. And in season 1, I had a lot of trouble with a lot of this trash, but now it seems like, I don't know, it's just everything's in a better state physically, damage-wise. So it just seems like it's a lot easier to make sure that you don't waste a lot of time fighting some of these packs. But anyway, so it's always going to be either Frost Guy or Sogan on here. So I would say, especially when it's Frost Guy, you're definitely pulling trash in with it. Sogan we've had some trouble with. I had a couple packs where it's like I pulled them in and people get rapid fired. There's also that rapid fire mechanic. I didn't even explain that, but it's like literally just a frontal. I mean, that's it. Just don't get hit by it. But sometimes if you're doing Sogadon or other trash with it, it might be difficult. You see, it kind of jumps towards a player and then shoots. So it's just kind of raining arrows on that shaman, and he just doesn't even notice it. So again, like 9 times out of 10, a lot of this mechanics are just not even going to be they're not even going to register to you. There's very few things that actually are dangerous about this trash, especially for non-tanks. So here we go. We're going to go and get another Church Elemental. Same thing. There's always going to be these Obliterators, and there's always going to be this Collector. We just want to make sure that we're kicking the appropriate cast and stopping whatever we need to stop. And just make sure you're single targeting this Shard of Halkias down, because I think a lot of people don't do this. They kind of just blindly AoE. And there's like, 3 or 4 fixes where that's like perfectly fine. But then there's like 3 or 4 fixes where that's really a bad idea. And one of them is Sanguine. We have it here. If the mob is the last to die, that means there's going to be 3 puddles of Sanguine on the ground, right? And those 3 puddles are going to heal the shard, because it's going to actually be casting Thrash when they die. So you see I'm actually very active in moving these mobs out of that. And we are actually killing it pretty quick there. So that works out really well. Not every group is going to do it that well. And this is actually like one of the hardest parts of the dungeon, honestly. Those Shards of Halkias are the real deal. So now we accidentally do this wrong. This is not how you should. Oh, wait, no. I do it right. The mistake we made in this dungeon is we skipped a pack. We were supposed to pick those Toiling Groundskeepers up. So we're actually going to be undercount, which is not a good thing. But typically, the mistake I make here is I come up here first. Or no, it's just like when all 3 Shards of Halkias die, you see the thing at the top, right? The bar has to fill. Once it reaches 100, you could fight the boss, okay? If you fight them in an order where, like, this is the last mob you fight, then you're sitting there waiting for that bar to fill. It takes a long time. So just don't fight one of these things as the last thing you pick up. That's the mistake I've made here. Whereas I pick up the middle packs and then kind of forget about one of the Shards of Halkias, because I'm so used to the season 1 route, which is completely different than what I've been doing, and I kind of get back into those bad habits. But just be aware that if you fight the Shard of Halkias last, the boss will still be there, like on active, and there'll be a bunch of trash in front of the boss, which I guess technically you can pull if you want count. I've never seen anybody do that. I actually have no idea what happens if you kill that trash. They're like channeling on the boss, but I don't actually know what happens if you pull that trash. If anyone knows, let me know. Like, do they give count? Do they, maybe if you kill them, they summon the boss? I'm not actually sure. But they disappear. The Shard of Halkias, they go away, and then Halkias comes out and he kills them. So now this is what you want to do. Now you want to be collecting them. As you see, there's all those mobs up there channeling on them. But yeah, this is another big pull here. Pretty straightforward. Just get him over, and usually I would have Gore Fiends, but I don't have it up right now. So same thing. We have now 2 obliterators and the rapid fire, and then the dogs and the deadly thrust, and it's just like a lot of mechanics, but they're just not really that big of a deal. Like it's really not much going on here at all. As a tank, I would just be really focused on the wicked bolts, really focused on making sure I don't die to the dogs, because the dogs are what will ultimately force your hand. You will eventually hit a critical mass with these bleeds, no matter how geared you are or how easy the key is. There will, like, unless they die so fast that you're not ever going to be in danger of them, they will eventually come to a point where you cannot sustain the bleeds. Or you'll just get lucky and drop the stacks because of like parries, like, and stuff, and slight kiting like I've done. But it's eventually, it's going to be too much to sustain. So unfortunately, we do still have to do a bit of kiting. Now, here's a little trick here. Okay, so let's talk about this. The Loyal Stoneborns. These guys are the mind controllable gargoyles I've been talking about. And this is a really good place to use them because this boss is pretty free. As you see, by the way, 19 minutes and 54 seconds. And we have not even thought about Lust. Let's actually take a minute and look at when Lust has been up. So Lust has been up for a long time now. Actually, not as long as I thought. Okay. So it's really not as big of a waste as it looks like it is. But yeah, a lot of times you get here even slower. If I don't know which way you describe it, but a lot of times Lust has been up for quite a while here. And people really do want to lust on this boss just because it's up, but it's not good. Like, you can't lust there. This first boss is just a complete joke. And these Loyal Stoneborns are going to really do a lot of damage. So this boss is kind of just like almost like a freaking patchwork boss. Like, it does no danger whatsoever, and it doesn't really, there's no necessity for any type of CDs. But obviously, it is a boss, so you have to kill it as fast as you possibly can. So we're gonna get 2 Loyal Stoneborns. You can get that one across the way. Just make sure the patrol is not in play. And we honestly probably should have saved a third one. The third one that was over by that previous or church elemental. We could have easily gotten that one for this boss too. So I'm not exactly sure how you get 2 at once, but I do see people do this all the time. We actually have 2 different Ventures, so that's part of it. But now I'm setting up something a little sketchy. So let's just talk about this. I've talked about it a lot over the last few months. As of right now, I'm using a trinket from Tazavesh. Okay, it's called Codex of the First Technique. It is working in a way that I do not think is possible to be intended. Okay. It reflects damage. It's supposed to reduce the damage you take and reflect some of it back. Okay. So the way I see it is it's probably supposed to be going back to the target that inflicted the damage, right? That would be the way it would seem to me. But for some reason, it does it to my target, not the target that dealt damage to me, but my target. So I can use that to hit any target. Okay, so I could put all that damage into any target. For some reason, there's also a global radius of 100 yards on this trinket. So that means that anything within 100 yards, I can target and it will take damage from the trinket, meaning it will aggro. Now, there's another Loyal Stoneborn up there. This feels a little cheaty, but it is actually possible for hunters. I think druids can do it too. I have seen classes do this before in season 1. Okay. So I'm only using this in places where I know it is possible to do it otherwise. And I don't want to get too reliant on this, but it's obviously, it's been like this for 7 weeks now. I mean, by the time you watch this, it might be even longer. So I don't know what to say. If it's working, I'm not that fussed about using it, but it's probably a bug. Probably shouldn't be happening. One way or the other, if you believe you have a way of aggroing that Loyal Stoneborn, you should definitely do it. The situation here, though, is that I'm not actually in range of it. It's too far away, so it didn't aggro, I don't think. But it will come eventually. But yeah, as you see, this boss has like effectively no mechanics. He does this, these 4 beams. These beams do turn, kind of like Trilliax or whatever in Nighthold. He'll like kind of make a sudden swing back the other direction. So there we go. I finally got it because we weren't close enough. So, but anyway, he'll make a swing suddenly. So just make sure you're not, falling asleep while you're doing that mechanic. Otherwise, that's literally the whole mechanic. I guess like the one mechanic on the fight that is meant to be difficult is staying in that giant red circle, because on normal that doesn't even exist. But on Mythic and Mythic Plus and stuff, if you run out of that red circle for more than like a second, you get feared and you probably pull trash and wipe. So, yeah, like it's actually, I guess that's meant to be the hard part of the fight, but it's not, because the boss dies so fast that Like, I think what was in their design headspace was like, let's make it so people constantly have to move out of mechanics, but you can't move too far. And that's what's happening here. Like, so I have to move that, and I see that shaman there. So I'm like, all right, well, I won't move until he moves, and now he moves. So you see, like, I'm trying to be a little bit more judicious about the movements. You could also stack these up. Like, these things, they don't really do much damage at all. I think it's physical damage too. It looks like it would be magic damage of some sort, but I'm pretty sure it's not. The beam is definitely shadow damage, but the crumbling slam and the glass on the ground is not. So, yeah, I don't know. That fight is actually probably one of the easiest fights in the game. And the second fight is actually one of the hardest fights in the game. And then the third fight is, again, one of the easiest fights in the game. So, yeah, we're accurately noticing that we are short on count. And that is because I accidentally forgot to pull the Toiling Groundskeepers with the second shard of Halkias. So make sure you check out the route video. Don't mess it up like me. I've messed this dungeon up a lot recently. But these mobs are perfectly fine to fight. In fact, in Season 1, we used to do this all the time. I felt like this was a much better way to get pride. People were getting pride before they would leave that area. That just seems silly to me. These slashers are actually extremely easy, by the way. So this powerful swipe is dodgeable. For some reason, I'm not dodging it. Just completely asleep on that. But yeah, you can actually just run away from that. It's like only like a 3-yard frontal. So every time it happens, just run a few yards. So just kind of keep your character like turned a little bit and then just run and you're good and it won't hit you. You see, there you go. I actually dodged it there. So, but yeah, that is not on the route. We're not pulling those anymore. And I don't know if it's a good idea or a bad idea to fight them because I feel like if people use all their CDs on the first boss, you need to make sure you have them up for this boss. And maybe that gives you the time you need for it. So let's talk about this boss. This is what I would consider formerly, they did nerf it a little bit recently, but formerly one of the hardest bosses in the game. Definitely want lust here. Definitely want, potions, whatever you got. We're using it here, okay? So that stone call is the first real mechanic. It's going to summon 6 ads, okay? So these ads are the crux of the difficulty of the fight. And the way it works is they run from the sides there. Those 6 spawn locations are always there. They're always exactly the same spot. They're going to run to the middle, and the first player they aggro, they're going to stop on. So sometimes they'll run all the way right to the boss. Sometimes they won't run at all because there'll be players all spread out and all that stuff. So, ideally they won't aggro on some random DPS, but I think 9 times out of 10 they do kind of funnel in, and it makes it pretty easy to deal with. But if you're Blood DK, you have your ace in the hole. You could throw a Gorfiends out and make this whole mechanic super easy. Because not only do you want to kill them and interrupt them and stop them from casting and all this stuff, but you also want to kill them with a mechanic that he does afterwards. So it's actually really important that they're stacked up. Now this is perfectly fine. This is more than enough. So here is the mechanic. This gray circle I have to hit those mobs with it. He's going to jump on top of me, and if I do not hit those mobs, they will respawn. But if I hit them, he will break them, effectively. That's like the lore of it. He will break them, and they will not respawn. So you kill 6, you have to kill them quick enough so this mechanic comes out after they're dead. Then you hit them. But you do have 2 rounds of mechanic per spawn, at least in the first set. I think there's like some differing pattern of it. Never really seen the fight go long enough for it to be an issue or fail to kill them enough for it to be an issue. But there is some difference here. But at least in the beginning of the fight, you always should be able to kill these. The problem is when they're all spread out. But there's more to this than just that. Okay, so they nerf this fight, but the Stone Shattering Leap does a lot of damage. This is a really dangerous mechanic. And the person who gets it, so there's also this curse. Okay, this is a lot going on in this fight. So he's going to put this curse on all 5 players, okay? It's eventually going to stun you. It's going to slow you to the point that you eventually get stunned. So that makes dealing with him leaping on you harder. Now, Blood DK has multiple ways to deal with this. They can AMS prior to the curse going on you, or they can also just get dispelled. Like if somebody has the ability to dispel you and wants to do that, they can dispel the curse. So Druid, Shaman, and Mage can do this. Or you can also just Icebound the stun portion of it. Okay, so there's multiple ways to not have problems with this Blood DK. But the thing is, once he leaps on you, he's then going to hit you and do this bleed. So you'll see I now have this debuff on me, and this does a lot of damage, okay? But you can actually avoid taking that debuff if you're really quick to move out of it. So the way people do it for non-tanks, like I don't care. I literally don't care that it's on me. But the way people do it when they're actually worried about it is they curse dispel the person who has it, the person who has the circle, to make sure, because all 5 people have the curse. So you have to identify who has the circle. So you identify who has the circle, dispel that person. Now that person can move around freely. Okay, so they're not going to be slowed and stunned. If you get stunned, you're not dodging the mechanic, right? So if you don't get stunned, you're far enough away from the boss that when he jumps, you have a split second to sprint out of it. So you could blink out of it, disengage out of it, all of these things. He will still jump and land where he was, but you will not take the damage from the bleed that he puts on you afterwards, okay? So that's a little risky though, because if you do it wrong, like if you blink early, he still will land on you. Like you're going to blink so early that now he's just going to change where he's jumping and he's going to land on you anyway. And I've seen people actually blink on top of another person and kill both people. So it's up to you. There's so much strategy involved in this boss at times. It seems almost ridiculous. So it's up to you how you want to handle it. I would just honestly, if you're watching this video, probably just eat the mechanic. Don't try to get too fancy, and don't even worry about it. But pretty straightforward encounter. Obviously, that blood pool is always going to go on a player too. So it gets a little bit messy as the fight goes on. There's going to be a lot of those. But yeah, so you see, he's going to give us one more chance to kill the ads. If we failed, we now have one more chance to kill the ads. And he's just going to jump on that warlock. So let's see if he does anything. No. So he just eats it, no problem. So it's not even really dangerous. He puts up a defensive. So I'm always thinking first set, we don't need to gather the mobs. It's really easy. They funnel in anyway, but everybody has their CDs up. So even if they don't funnel in, they're going to die quick enough. Part of the reason that you want them to funnel in is so they die quickly. Like if they're all spread out and they're not getting hit by your AoE, then they're not going to die quickly. So you want to get them all together on top of the boss. Now, single grip works for that too. I always try to single grip one in. I always try to interrupt. Things like Solar Beam, AoE silences are going to be really good on these mobs, because then they're definitely going to funnel in. Once they start casting, they're not going to move though. Unless you interrupt them, they're not going anywhere. But as you see, that one on the outside is actually kind of probably missing a few of the AoEs, so it takes a while to die, but it eventually dies. And again, I AMS the Curse of Stone, and I have the mechanic twice. This is as lucky as you get. This is a tyrannical week. We are getting so insanely lucky by me getting this, but unfortunately the shaman doesn't get out in time. He gets stunned inside my ring, and I have no option but to hit him. Well, maybe there was a slight play I could have made, but I didn't make it. But anyway, you see the blood puddles are starting to add up. The mechanics are starting to kind of compound on each other. And now I'm thinking, here, let's get all three of these all together. Because that time we actually needed it. The range are out there kind of too far, so the mobs get stuck out on the rage. If I didn't Gore Fiends that, we were going to have a lot of trouble finishing this boss. And look, I get this 3 times. You can't get any luckier. But again, a DPS gets hit, so it's almost like we negate the luck. If the tank gets this mechanic, you are home free as the healer. The healer's job is very tight on this fight. There's a lot of movement and a lot of healing to do, and you have to be ready for it every time. Now, like I said, they did nerf his leap, but still that bleed will do a lot of damage, and it's still your job as the healer to make sure nobody dies to it. And I don't think it's boppable. I think it's a magic or something. I don't really know what this guy's doing. Oh yeah, so he's trying to dodge it. Okay, so he accurately dodges it. So that's cool. So there you go. You saw everything in that. That's everything you're going to see in this fight. A very complicated encounter, but on non-tyrannical weeks, it should die so quick that it doesn't really cause too much issues. So famously here, I have been pulling Varuth or, whatever, the fire guy here with the next pack. And I think I've been making that mistake with Varuth. I just think you don't ever pull Varuth with other trash. I honestly, unless it's like one mob, Varuth is just so dangerous. It's so position required, right? Like there's so many potential packs that you could pull on top of Varuth that are going to make doing his mechanic very, very difficult, or doing their mechanics very difficult. So I think you just chill and don't pull Varuth with stuff. But anyway, right now we get him and then we go inside. At this point, if you have well above, I'd say 11 minutes, you're upgrading this key. Okay. Now they just added another minute to the dungeon, right? So it should be like, I don't think anybody's going to have trouble with this unless you wipe a bunch. But formerly, I would say about 10 minutes. But now, since you have the lieutenants coming off the boss, about 11 plus minutes, that's usually what you need to know you have an upgrade ahead of you. So again, I'm going to go really big here. We're going to get them all. And a little dangerous, but those dogs are really, they're quite dangerous. So just keep that in mind. Anytime you fight these dogs as a tank, you're going to be in some precarious positions eventually. One way or the other, they will put you in those positions. I don't care what tank you are. They are the most hard-hitting mobs in probably any dungeon the most consistently. Like, they're always going to be a challenge to some degree. And it's just up to you to deal with that. So, but anyway, we pulled 2 packs here again. The second pack is actually a lot of casters. We have another Obliterator. We have another Collector. So you see that Collector putting that thing on the Warlock again. That's actually dispellable too. I should have mentioned that earlier. So if you leave that on the person, they're going to die. But yeah, you can just dispel that. You want to get that off. So you can either stun it or dispel it. So a couple options, but Siphon Life it's called. So here with Sanguine, we have some issues, of course. This isn't really how you want to be doing these pulls, but we're letting the cast, all different types of mechanics go off, and we're just kind of just brute forcing it. I love seeing that Rain of Fire though, so let's see it. I'll take a Destro Warlock. I love Rain of Fire is probably one of my favorite spells in the game, by the way. But anyway, no problem. Just try to keep those mobs moving, especially the Houndmasters. They're not going to move. So if you have Sanguine or an affix that is stopping them from dying, then you're going to need to make sure you have something like knockbacks and stuff. They're not going to move. But yeah, as you see, like, I mean, it's just really making it look easier than it should be because it's a very, very easy trash week. So if you have any questions about any of this trash, please let me know. I'll happily talk about it, but it's like, it's honestly so benign. They have so many mechanics and they just don't do anything. They're all so benign. Like, it's weird. Other than the dogs hitting so hard, it's just kind of a complete joke how easy this trash is. Even on fortified weeks, it's just numerically difficult then. But like, all of those mechanics just don't really matter. Like, they don't do anything. But so here, a lot of people might skip Verruth. We have over 10 minutes or skip Soganon. So we have over 10 minutes at this point. I'm not skipping Soganon. This whole like let's skip Soganon thing is something that you'll have to battle. This is a great dungeon to do it in though, because he's right at the end. You literally have like nothing left. So yeah, it probably isn't a bad idea to skip him. There's like, yeah, literally 2 pulls after this, right? So not a bad idea if you're skipping. But the thing about Soganon is that I think like season 3 or season 2 is easy because of Soganon. Like, legitimately, he gives like the best power in the game for survival. And people are like, oh yeah, I don't need survival. But it's like, you do. You just don't know it. And the last boss is actually quite funny with Sogadon's aura though. So we'll talk about that when we get there. But okay, so this is actually probably the easiest boss in the game. It has no mechanics. It actually doesn't do anything. It literally doesn't do. It basically doesn't do anything. It has an interruptible cast, Bolt of Power. Yeah, that's a tough one. Make sure you interrupt that. Just press your kick button. Some people struggle, I know. Volley of Power, another one. Brag Keck. He's gonna get that kick from the Warlock. No problem. Now this is the actual only mechanic. The Ghastly Parishioners that are in this next area, they come here on the fight. The way you stop them from doing damage to you is make them run into one of these jars. Then they get absorbed, the jar goes away. If you don't do this, they AoE. They do a lot of AoE, and it honestly feels like it ramps up. I'm not sure it does, but it does feel like it gets harder as time goes on. So just, do the mechanic. Like, that's actually the only mechanic other than moving out of this mechanic. I don't know. It's very strange how this dungeon has like the hardest boss and then the 2 easiest bosses, but that's another reason why Halls has always been easy, because the bosses are just super easy. So on any tyrannical week, you have 1 test, and if you pass it, you will upgrade the key. But one thing I will say is, if the fight lasts as long as it's going to in this key, all 4 of these will be consumed. Okay, so there's 4 up immediately. They will be consumed. If you have a 5th add spawn, you will need a 5th jar. Now, the way that works is it just eventually returns. Okay, there's nothing you can do about it from what I could tell. But I think it's on some kind of respawn from how quickly you use the jar. So, for example, if the first ghost that comes out, you take forever to use the jar, and then the other 3 are really quick, then the jar takes a while to respawn because if it's on some kind of CD on a respawn, right? So you might actually have more problems with that than you should, right? I don't really know though. But as you see, there's a ghost out right now, and there's no jar currently. So, oh god, we're in such grave danger. Oh, the jar's back. It's a backer, right? It's like, okay, see you later. I don't know. It's just a very strange fight. I don't know what they were going for. I don't know what they thought they were going for, because it's like, Also, you get the 2 gargoyles every time as well. It's like, who else is gonna... It's like, what they think people are gonna do with those gargoyles? It's like make an easy fight even easier. Was anybody not gonna use those there? Pro tip, you can actually not use them there and then snap them through the portal and use them on this guy if you want. This guy is going to be very interesting. He's going to summon these red ads, which are more dangerous than you think because they fixate on players. But the main thing here is he's going to drain the souls, these yellow mobs around the room. And every time he does that, he's going to heal. He's going to take their health and he's going to use it for himself, which is selfish guy, you know. But until every single soul is dead, you really can't kill this guy because he's just going to heal up. So, a little pro tip here as well. If everybody has necrotic dagger of necrotic wounding, you can actually just straight up kill him. If you have, I don't know how many people you should have to be able to do that, but if you have like, yeah, multiple people with it, it's one of the anima powers for season 2. It will stop him from healing so much that he heals for like 5% of his health. Typically, if he even heals a single person from a single soul, it's going to be like 100% of his health. Now, there's a little bit of something going on here. You see this mage getting very uppity about this. So yeah, we are wasting time. But typically, I would say you kill, like, you do all your AoE on those yellow mobs, do like a full round of that, and then you kind of just chill and kill the red mobs. The red mobs are way more dangerous than people think, and you're not going to get out of this room quickly unless you're super big AoE, like you have balanced druids or something. It's just not going to go quick. So what you do is you just get them all low, do some damage to all of them, and then he'll kill them for you by draining on them. And while he's doing that, you're not doing any damage to him, which is unfortunate, but you're cleaning up the red ads, the actual mobs that he's spawning, because those are way more dangerous than he is. Like, they can literally wipe you because they will fixate, and it's like actually really bad. You could easily die to those red mobs. I've had 3 summons of those stack up, and it's, oh my god, it's so bad. They just start killing people out like immediately. So, and that'd be on fortified. That'd be really bad. Okay, so we have the final boss here. You always have lust here, no matter what. I don't think you could ever do those splits if you're lusting for the second boss, especially. But if somehow you lust 4 times, maybe you won't. So anyway, that statue though, you see me get hit by that. It did almost no damage. If we had Sogan on, that thing's gonna hit for like 70k. So yeah, that's the only actual physical damage on the fight. Even the boss, to me, doesn't do a lot of physical damage. So it's a pretty easy skip. Honestly, like I would say Soganon is pretty straightforward skip in this dungeon, especially because he's so late. It's up to you guys. The thing about me skipping Soganon, though, it's like you're asking me to be a lot less defensive, and I better be sure I don't need it, And in this dungeon, I certainly don't need it. So, okay, so here's another cool little tip. This is actually maybe a bug. I'm not really sure how to describe it, but if you stand in the hitbox of 2 beams, both beams will be on you, and as you see, I only have 1 debuff. So I'm effectively soaking 2 beams with only 1 debuff. That makes it extremely easy. The people are soaking 1 individually, but I'm soaking 2. So you actually, I think it might even be possible to soak all 4. It's a little risky because if you don't do it, then they're going to hit people. But yeah, just throw AMZ down or any defensive CD or whatever, and just make sure you do this. As a tank, you definitely want to do this. Something like Holy Pally, you definitely want to do this. Anybody who's like sure they can do it and they're not going to be in any danger. Because the problem is if you start moving, like I've seen this happen a lot where somebody's accidentally soaking 2, and then they start panicking because the damage they're taking, and it's like, oh, well, now they move and now the 2 are hitting because now nobody's soaking any, right? So just don't risk that. Just if you're not a tank or a healer, don't even do that. But anyway, the statues hit pretty hard. They're always going to get thrown at a person's direct, or they're going to get thrown at like a random direction. So you can tell which direction they're going to get thrown by the direction they're facing. So I see where they're facing. It's a little difficult to tell, but it's pretty, especially as a tank, it doesn't really do anything. Unleash Suffering. If anybody ever gets hit by that and dies to it, let me know. I want to have a clip of that. But this Door of Shadows thing, he's actually only going to do twice. A lot of people don't realize this. It's based on his percentage. He does it once at like 70 and once at 40 or something. So once you get through that, the fight's over. Like, this is the actual hard part of the fight, and it's not very hard. So once you get through that, the fight's like legitimately over. There's no other mechanics on this encounter. But yeah, just be ready to soak. Like this week actually could be a bit of an issue because of storming. if storming knocks me out of that, we might actually take damage. So you see, storming actually knocked that shaman out of his soak, and he might have, if he didn't recover quickly, we might have had a lot of trouble. If the beams hit the statues, they do a lot of damage to everybody. So right now it's doing concentrated damage to the shaman and the mage, but if it didn't hit the shaman or the mage, it would be doing that damage to everybody. And if you have one hitting a statue for even a few seconds, you could wipe. But I've had 2 or 3 hit a statue, and it's just like a instant wipe, like you're just dead. But anyway, there's one other mechanic too that is pretty cool. It's Blood Decay, Stigma of Pride. This is actually a really dangerous dot. In fact, I die to this dot all the time after the key is over, because people just stop healing at that point, and it actually lasts like after the key is over as well. But so it's a magic dot, right? So if you AMS prior to the cast finishing, like right now, or right at the last second, like I do there, you will not get the debuff. The debuff just doesn't happen. That's like the tank breaker. That's like the main mechanic of the fight for tanks. So that's pretty much it. Also, erupting torment. I mean, I literally don't even move out of that, but yeah, I don't know. It does damage, I guess it's supposed to. I don't know. This is strange how easy this fight is. It's very strange how easy some of the bosses are in this dungeon. So not, I think honestly, probably one of the easiest dungeons, like in terms of how, if you're trying to do a dungeon with 0 deaths, this is probably the one. Let's put it that way. Honestly, I don't know if there's a dungeon that's easier to not die on. As you see, we have 2 deaths. Easily upgrade this key. So that's it. Let me know what you think. The timer has been increased even. We had, 2 minutes left here? So that means we would now have over 3 minutes left on this. Definitely going to be back to one of the easiest dungeons, and I think maybe there'll be some tough weeks. Tyrannical is a bit of a weird week for this, because it's like the only difficulty is the second boss, but people suck at the second boss so hard sometimes. Like we did it so well, and we got so lucky. I cannot stress to you how lucky we got that I got that mechanic every time. Now, granted, other people kept getting hit, so it kind of negated that luck, but that is insanely lucky, because then the healer has so much less stress to do. So anyway, I hope it helps. Thanks for watching. Let me know. I hope to, if you guys know more about things in the dungeon, please comment below as well. Otherwise, we will see you guys in the next one.